morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of MC Squared, the Monday Coffee Conversation. We're out peeling around this morning on a absolutely beautiful spring morning. It's cool, sun's out, and it's just begging for a good hot cup of coffee. So I've got mine. Hope you've got yours. Let's get into it. All right. For anybody that might be on my Facebook page, you already know we've got a baby goat. She was born Friday, I think, maybe Thursday. I'm not 100% sure. But she's just 3 or 4 days old, little old baby girl, cute as can be. And we had to do something when we knew that she was on her way. And luckily, I just finished it up the day before. But we've only got the one big pen and the chicken house connected to it, and the goat and the mama goat and the ducks and the chickens, they all live in there in perfect harmony. But when you have a baby, you have to separate it from the male because they'll get jealous, or it's just something that they do, and they'll start beating it, headbutting it, and stomping it, and can hurt them real bad or even kill them. So we had to build a separate pen to keep the baby and mommy in for a while, and to keep it from trying to breed her and keep it from hurting her and all that. So we just made a little small one for right now. We're going to extend it here in a few days because they're going to be living in it for a while. But it's plenty of room for one goat and a baby for a few days. It's got a little old house in it, old playhouse. She's got her food, the mama does, and the water. And when we walked out this morning, she was doing, just a great mama. She was standing in the house and letting the baby feed, and just a good thing to see. But when I went out yesterday, I went out to feed the mama, and there was no mama and baby inside the new pen. So I got to looking around, and she was way over here somewhere in the weeds, just munching around. Baby was following her every step, and we just put a little temporary gate up, just a pallet tied up, and she had found a way to push the bottom out just enough so she could squeeze through there. So her and the baby had got out. And this is, it's not unusual for animals to do this. We hear all the time about cows getting out, horses getting out. I've got chickens. Most of them stay inside the pen every day, but 4 of them every day fly out. I guess they think that what's out in the grass is better than what's inside, and I guess mama goat, she just got tired of being in her pen and wanted to get out and try some other food or whatever. But they don't realize, because they're animals, that we put them in these places to keep them safe. Because around here we've got predators like crazy. There's coons, there's coyotes, there's hawks, and just all kinds of things that would love to have a little baby goat or its mama for a meal or 5. But she don't realize that. She just knows that she didn't want to be in there no more, so she got out. And that's animal instinct, not just farm animals or wild animals, but humans are animals too, and that's our instinct sometimes. You ever tell a kid to do something that is going to keep them safe and keep them protected, keep them from getting hurt, but they don't really want to listen. Don't touch that stove because it's hot and it'll burn you. Ooh. Just got to touch it and see if we're telling the truth or not. Or, don't run on this wet concrete because you'll fall. I don't really believe them. I'm going to run on this wet concrete. Next thing you know, you got to keep crying because they either burnt their finger, or they fell on the concrete, or they did something that they were told not to do to keep them safe. And they end up getting hurt. Same thing with these baby goats and chickens and whatever other kind of animal you can think of. They get out of the fence of protection that we build for them to keep them safe, to keep them sheltered, and they just have to get out. Just got to get out of there. And little kids and goats ain't the only things that do that. We as grown-ups are told a lot of times, don't do this, it's bad for you. How many times you go to the doctor and they say, you need to quit eating hamburgers, and you leave the doctor's office and you go get a hamburger. Usually it's biscuits because I go to the doctor early in the morning. I like them Hardee's biscuits. But we're told things all the time that's for our own good, and we just don't listen because we're stubborn, we're prideful, and sometimes we just got to see if it's true or not. And that happened a long, long, long time ago, just as it does today. It happened to the first two people on earth, Adam and Eve. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 17, God gave them this paradise and let them do whatever. Adam even got to name all the animals. And he gave them all this free reign and gave them one rule. And they just couldn't leave it alone. 2 and 17 says, "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die." Of course, he meant spiritual death because they were no longer protected by him. But he also meant physical death because at that time, humans were not intended to die. The heaven that we look for now and the paradise at the end of this life, we were all going to be in it. The Garden of Eden was perfection. And they had one rule. And they just couldn't go without breaking that one rule. Just seeing what would happen. Of course, they were tempted by Satan. And, they went along with it. But we're still paying for that mistake today. Because they broke the one rule that they had. Jesus had to die to give us, a way to come back. And to break that curse. And we're still paying for that today. A lot of other things come out of that. Not just sin, but the pain from labor of having a child. That was brought forth because of that. The pain of having to work all the time to get food and money and all the things we need. That was brought because of that. So we're still paying for that sin today. And today, we still do the same thing that Adam and Eve did. Sometimes we look at the things that God tells us not to do. And we look at them as punishment. We look at them as, he's old fuddy-duddy, and God just don't want me to have no fun. When it's nothing like that at all. We see it as a wall to keep us from going and enjoying things, but really it's a fence to protect us. Just like the fence I built for these goats, to protect them. That's what God's rules and God's statutes, as the Bible calls them, that's what they're for, to help protect us, to keep us safe. To keep us out of harm's way in ways dealing with the enemy. And another verse I want to share with you comes from Psalm chapter 1 and verse 2. It says, "But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doeth he meditate day and night." His delight is in the law of the Lord. Now the Hebrew word that they use there for delight, it's not just smile on your face, joy or happiness. It's delight as in what we would use for having fun. That same word was used in Isaiah about children playing and enjoying themselves. So it's not just, this is what I need to do. This is what God's making me do. It says that the blessed man, his delight, his having fun, his joy comes from the law of the Lord. Why can't we see it that way? Because we're still human. Because we have flaws. Because sometimes we just outright dumb. So we have to go and test and, see what God will allow us to do, push the boundaries and sometimes cross those boundaries to see just how needed it is. We look at these statutes. We look at these commandments. We're like, well, that'd be fun if I could do that. And I'll be the first to tell you, when I was living in sin, I had a lot of fun. I'm not one of these that's going to tell you that the life I had wasn't fun, because I had a lot of fun. I was told once after I got saved, an elderly fella told me, he said, back when I was drinking and all that, he said, I look back on it now, said, I thought I was having fun, but really I wasn't. My words were, well, you must not have been doing it right. Because I had a lot of fun. I didn't just think I was having fun. But it's a different kind of fun. It was a fun for a moment. It was a fun for right then and there, but it led to destruction and death later on if I hadn't came out of it. And also, it was temporary fun in other ways, because it wasn't so fun the next morning. When you wake up sick with a headache, it's not as fun as the night before it was. So we look at these things as God doesn't want us to have any fun. That's not it at all. God's protecting us from consequences. Because when we break rules, when we break statutes, when we break God's commandments, there are consequences. And they may not always be immediate like a hangover was, but there's consequences. And if that goat repeatedly keeps getting out of that fence, there's a really good chance that something's going to get it. especially if it goes out at night. There's a really good chance that something's going to get it. Every time it goes out the fence, the chance grows. The chance is getting better and better. Same with us. Every time we break God's statutes, every time we go over His boundaries, we get worse and worse, closer and closer to getting entangled by sin like we were before we ever came to it. Because once you get that foot in the water, you know, everybody, the old saying, stick your toe in the water and see how it feels. We stick our toe in sin. Satan's pretty smart. He knows how to entice us, how to make us want to go back to it. He tricked Adam and Eve. He doesn't tell us about all the things that could happen, the bad, the consequences. He just, don't that feel good? Ain't that water just right? Go ahead and jump in. He'll even twist God's words like he did with Adam and Eve. When they said, but God said we'll surely die. And he said, you'll not surely die. He twisted God's own words. So we have to be careful to not be enticed to cross them boundaries, to cross that fence. Certain things that God don't want us to watch, if you have it in your heart, God says don't watch that, don't watch it. If God places on your heart not to go to this place because it's temptation for you, don't go. Certain people, Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron. If we're around people that dull our spirit or entice us into sinning or handling talk that we shouldn't or doing things that God has placed on our heart not to, we shouldn't be around them. Doesn't mean we shouldn't witness. Doesn't mean we shouldn't pray for. But it means we shouldn't be hanging out with them 24/7. Because eventually one of us will rub off on the other one. And if you're not strong enough in spirit, if you're not strong enough in your conviction with God, you won't bring them closer to God. They'll pull you farther away. So let's look at these boundaries, these statutes, these fences that God has for us as exactly what they are. They're fences for protection. When the Bible tells us about Jesus left the 99 to go find the one left the fence, left the protected area. It was wonderful of Jesus to go find that one. He knew these 99 were still protected. But if that one hadn't left, he wouldn't have had to do that. So let's look at God's laws, God's commandments, God's statutes as exactly what they are. They're for our protection. They're for our benefit. They're not something that He's trying to make our lives dull and He's trying to make us do without. They're for our protection. So let's stay with that. When we go and we see these things, it might look better on the other side of the fence. You know, the saying, the grass is always greener. I did a message 2 or 3 years ago. There was some grass here in our yard that was really green and really tall and really healthy looking. But the reason was there was a septic tank leak. So the grass looked better, but the reason for the grass looking better was not a good thing. So keep that in mind. Stay inside God's boundaries, inside God's statutes, and don't see it as a way of God trying to hurt you. It's a way of protecting you. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Monday Coffee Conversation.